There are around 600 licensed radio stations in the UK.
The most prominent radio stations in the UK are BBC Radio.
This is an operational business division and service of the British Broadcasting Corporation, which has operated in the United Kingdom under the terms of a Royal Charter since 1927.
In the United Kingdom there are two types of radio: community radio and commercial radio. Community radio is a radio service offering a third model of radio broadcasting in addition to commercial and public broadcasting.
In the UK, community radio refers to a system of licensing small, micro-local, non-profit radio stations which started in 2002.
In its early days, the pilot scheme was known as Access Radio.
The idea for this new level of radio broadcasting was piloted by the regulator at the time. The Radio Authority in 2002 the licensing of 15 so-called access radio stations for a trial period of 1 year to test the feasibility of such stations.
The licences were extended in 2003 for a further year, and in 2004 a consultation was issued by the authority as successor, Ofcom, on the creation of community radio.
Following this, an invitation to groups to apply for community radio licences nationwide was issued.
192 stations applied, and of those, 106 were awarded licences.
Unlike in commercial radio licensing, which is generally advertised to cover a specific region, prospective operators are able to specify the target area and format to their station.
The Community Radio Order 2003 includes varying funding stipulations based on community radio stations' proximity to a commercial radio broadcaster.
No community radio station is permitted to raise more than 50% of its operating costs from a single source, including on-air sponsorship and advertising.
The remainder of operating costs must be met through other sources.
These can include public funding via grants, donor income, national lottery funding or charities.
Regulator Ofcom also makes an available an amount of funding annually through its Community Radio Fund.
Stations may apply for this money in the same way as grant funding.
However, where a community radio station lies totally within the transmission area of advertisements, with a population coverage of under 150,000, no sponsorship or advertising may be sought, and all funding must come from alternative sources.
In a small number of areas where a commercial station covers a population of under 150,000, a community radio station may not be licensed at all.
This protects the financial interests of smaller commercial stations.
Following pressure, the UK's Commercial Radio Companies Association later merged into Radio Centre. Firstly, commercial broadcasting, also called private broadcasting, is the broadcasting of television programmes and radio programming by privately owned corporate media. Hurdy-bird, profit.
This is in contrast to public broadcasting, which receives government subsidies and eschews most, or all, paid advertising.
Breeze, Heart, Magic and Classic FM are all examples of national commercial network radio stations.
Examples of community radio include KFM, Indigo FM.
As the radio stations are expanding, they break off into more specific radio stations.
Global Radio is a UK example which broke off into Capital FM, which is all chart-based.
Then Capital Extra, an all-urban station based in London, originally named Choice FM.
Another is Heart, which is a network of adult contemporary pop stations across southern England and North Wales.
Then you have Classical FM, classical music station broadcast nationally on FM and DAB, also available on Freesat, Sky Digital and Virgin Media.
The amount of radio stations has spawned steep market competition, prompting broadcasters to come up with better and sellable programmes to run the race.
A radio station cannot survive on its own unless it has proper marketing and advertisement strategies.
In view of addressing this problem faced by radio stations, the British Broadcasting Corporation, like the BBC, has started an ambitious campaign from Butwell to train radio broadcasters on how they create productive and profitable programmes.
This training is aimed at planning and implementing strategies to market broadcast time slots and making profit out of it, said Kapalni Lakal.
She said the primary focus of the training was to teach broadcasters a way to attract local advertisers and the use of local resources and culture.
As a radio station has gained a sense of economic independence and stability, it cannot produce a quality programme. Our training aims at providing that independence and stability, said Mishra.
The campaign is expected to reach 120 groovy radio stations across the country.
Deregulation, intended to ensure the survival of local radio, will come into force.
Measures will include a reduction in the mandatory amount of local programming and freedom for rival stations to use the same buildings and technology to cut costs.
At one point, it had seemed that the Act might not become a law because of the controversy over other areas of the legislation, particularly digital piracy and the provision of regional news on television. There was a very serious threat, if the DE Act had not gone through, that some of those stations and companies would have gone to the wall because it would have taken too long for a new government to enact the necessary legislation.